They didn't become more talkative. They became more precise. If they stopped filtering every sentence around you, if their silence felt different, not distant, just present. If you noticed they didn't withdraw after disagreeing, you might have mistaken it for comfort. It wasn't comfort, it was risk, and you probably didn't notice when it started. They didn't open up, they reduced the distance. If they stayed in the conversation after you misunderstood them, if they didn't switch the subject when it got personal, if the silence felt heavier, but they didn't leave, something shifted. You just didn't have language for it. INxx types don't trust loudly. INTJ, INTP, INFJ, INFP. Different structures, same instinct. Trust for them is not emotional display. It's lowered internal defense. You might have expected warmth. Instead, you got continuity. They kept showing up. Even when the conversation got inefficient. Even when you were wrong. Even when it cost them energy. And if you've been close to one, you've probably felt this. They don't escalate intimacy. They remove one barrier at a time. Slowly. Almost invisibly. They stop performing competence. An INxx who doesn't trust you will default to competence. INTJ and INTP lead with internal frameworks, NITE, TINE. INFJ and INFP filter through internal vision or values, NIFE, FINE. When trust is low, they show you the polished version, the structured idea, the refined opinion. But when trust begins, they let you see unfinished thoughts. They'll say, "I'm not sure yet." They'll contradict themselves mid-sentence. They'll expose confusion before clarity. For an INxx, confusion is private territory. If they let you see it, you're inside, and that probably didn't look dramatic. It looked like hesitation. They share something before it's logical. This is subtle. INTJ and INFJ, NI dominant, internally process patterns long before speaking. INTP and INFP, TIFI dominant, refine internally before expressing. If they trust you, they might speak before the internal model is complete. Not fully structured, not fully defended. You'll hear a thought, still forming. That's not casual, that's exposure. Because their dominant function, NITI or FI, protects internal coherence. Letting you see it mid-formation is a calculated vulnerability. And you probably responded with advice, which wasn't the point. They let you see emotional inconsistency. INxx types are often misread as emotionally stable or emotionally distant. Both are distortions. What you're actually seeing is regulation. INTJ and INFJ both carry inferior SE. Emotional immediacy, raw, unfiltered reaction can feel destabilizing, so they structure themselves before you ever see the impact. INTP carries inferior FE. Emotional reciprocity isn't absent. It's just carefully contained. INFP carries inferior TE. Externalizing emotion into something structured or solvable can feel exposing. So when an INxx trusts you, you don't see instability. You see where their inferior function is no longer fully guarded. An INTJ admitting they were affected more than they predicted, because SE slipped past TE's composure. An INTP revealing that logic didn't resolve something, because FE surfaced without a clear framework. An INFJ expressing frustration without softening it, because FE stopped managing the emotional temperature. An INFP saying, "I don't know why this hurt, but it did." Because TE isn't rushing to rationalize what FI already knows. That isn't inconsistency, it's reduced filtration. Emotional messiness from an INxx isn't weakness. It's the moment their dominant function stops protecting the inferior from exposure. And if you tried to fix it too quickly, you probably activated the very regulation system they had just lowered. They stay after conflict. This is one of the biggest signs. If someone stopped explaining themselves to you, if the silence came without anger, an INxx who doesn't trust you disengages quietly. No explosion, no scene, just internal closure. When they trust you, something different happens. They stay in the discomfort. INTJ uses TE to clarify instead of shutting down. INTP re-engages with TI to refine the misunderstanding. INFJ allows FE to remain engaged instead of retreating fully into NI. INFP allows FI to remain present without disappearing. Staying is effort. Effort is trust. You might have thought the argument meant distance. For them, it meant investment. They show you their pattern predictions. NI-dominant types, INTJ, INFJ, constantly run future projections internally. NE auxiliary types, INTP, INFP, explore possibilities and alternatives silently. Most of this never gets shared. Why? Because pattern projections are vulnerable. If wrong, they feel exposed. If dismissed, they feel unseen. When an INxx trusts you, they reveal predictions, not just plans, predictions. I think this is going to fall apart in 3 months. I don't think they're being honest. This feels unstable. These are not casual comments. These are internal maps. And if you laugh at them, something closes, quietly. They invite you into their solitude. This is the one most people miss. INxx types recharge alone. But there are levels of alone. There's recovering alone. And there's thinking alone. If they trust you, they allow presence during the second one. Parallel activity, quiet proximity, shared silence, without performance. They might send you a random article they're analyzing. Share a playlist that reflects their internal mood. Sit with you, without filling space. For NI-dominant types, this means letting you see the pattern-forming mind in real time. For TI-FI dominant types, this means exposing internal evaluation processes. It doesn't look like intimacy, but it is. And if you forced stimulation into that quiet, you probably disrupted something fragile. They adjust for you without announcing it. INxx types do not easily adapt their behavior for external validation. If they change something small for you, timing, tone, transparency, it's not accidental. INTJ softening the delivery, letting TE adjust the execution, while FI quietly weighs what feels personally right. INTP pausing to consider how it lands, letting inferior FE step in, even if it feels exposed. INFJ stating a real personal preference, instead of automatically harmonizing, allowing tertiary TI to clarify, even when FE would rather smooth it over. INFP clarifying boundaries, instead of withdrawing, bringing inferior TE forward to name the limit out loud. These micro adjustments are uncomfortable because they draw on lower functions, the parts that don't feel fully stable yet. For INTJ, TE guided by FI. For INFJ, TI clarity alongside FE care. For INTP, vulnerable FE. For INFP, deliberate TE. Growth feels unstable. They don't stretch like that for everyone. If they stretch for you, that's trust. You might have seen it as minor politeness. It wasn't minor. Here's what makes INxx trust different. Their dominant function is introverted. INTI-FI. Introverted dominance means the core of their identity forms internally, independent of external feedback. Trust, therefore, is not about emotional closeness. It's about internal access. For INTJ, NITEFISE. Trust means letting you see the vision before it's strategically deployed. Exposing FI values without framing them as rational decisions. For INTP, TINESIFE. Trust means allowing raw TI analysis without defensive humor, letting FE show awkward care. For INFJ, NIFETISE. Trust means letting NI uncertainty surface instead of projecting certainty, not using FE to smooth everything. For INFP, FINESITE. Trust means revealing FI vulnerability without poetic abstraction, using TE to clarify instead of disappearing. All four share this. Trust is the lowering of internal filtration, not louder affection, not dramatic confession, filtration, reduction. And once reduced, they are extremely sensitive to how you handle it. One dismissal can restore every wall. You won't see it happen, but you'll feel the shift. They didn't suddenly care more. They allowed you closer to what already mattered. If it felt quiet, it was. And if you missed it, they probably won't explain it twice.